when Rome realized the East was no longer obedient. The desert is not supposed to move like this, not in formation, not with banners, not with cities changing hands overnight. Yet across the eastern edge of the Roman world, something is breaking loose. Ports are seized, trade routes snap shut. Roman officials vanish from their offices, replaced by soldiers who do not answer to Rome. And in Alexandria, in Antioch, in the great caravan cities that once fed the empire's wealth, a new name begins to appear on orders, on taxes, on military commands. Not Caesar, not Senate, not governor. Zenobia. Rome does not face a riot. It does not face a rebellion. It faces a rival state, organized, disciplined, expanding. And the most unsettling part? At its center stands not a general hardened by decades of war, not a senator clawing for power, but a woman in silk and steel, issuing commands that men obey without hesitation. To Rome, she is impossible. To history, she will become dangerous. To the desert, she is already queen. But this story does not begin with conquest. It begins with a city that taught its daughters how to rule without ever being crowned. A girl raised where empires come to bargain. Long before Rome learns to fear her name, Zenobia grows up in Palmyra, a city that does not belong fully to anyone, not Rome, not Persia, not Arabia. Palmyra survives by standing between them. Here, caravans arrive heavy with silk, spices, gold, and secrets. Merchants speak in half a dozen languages before noon. Politics is not about loyalty, it is about leverage. Palmyra teaches its children one brutal lesson early. Power is not who shouts the loudest. Power is who controls the crossroads. Zenobia grows up breathing this reality. She is educated not only in poetry and philosophy, but in history, in how kingdoms rise, how rulers fall, and how weakness travels faster than armies. She learns languages: Greek, Latin, Aramaic, Egyptian. Not because it is elegant, but because language is access, and access is everything. While Roman daughters are taught obedience and alliances, Zenobia is taught to think, to listen, to measure, to remember that empires rarely collapse from the outside first. They rot from within. And Rome, at this moment in history, is already rotting. Plague, civil war, emperors rising and dying faster than statues can be carved. Zenobia watches all of it from a city that profits from Roman protection, but does not trust Roman permanence. She does not grow up dreaming of rebellion. She grows up learning how to wait. Because in Palmyra, you do not challenge giants head-on. You wait for them to stagger. And Rome is beginning to sway. The general, the widow, and the opening of the gate. Zenobia does not rise alone. She marries into power. Her husband is Odenathus, Palmyra's most powerful warlord, Rome's chosen strongman in the east, the man trusted to keep Persia at bay while Rome tears itself apart with its own civil wars. To Rome, Odenathus is useful. To Palmyra, he is protection. To Zenobia, he is opportunity. This is not a decorative marriage. Zenobia rides with him, studies his campaigns, listens to counsels meant for generals and governors, not women. And while Rome calls Odenathus a loyal client king, the truth is sharper. He is building his own empire under Rome's distracted nose. When Persian armies surge west and Roman defenses crumble, it is Odenathus who pushes them back. It is Palmyrene cavalry that saves Roman territory. It is Zenobia standing beside him as cities pledge loyalty not to Rome, but to the couple who actually defend them. Rome is grateful. Rome is also nervous, because gratitude is temporary, but ambition is permanent. Then, suddenly, the shield disappears. Odenathus is assassinated, murdered along with their young son during a campaign. No enemy army claims responsibility. No foreign power takes credit, just silence. And opportunity. Zenobia is left with a child heir, a shaken army, and a city that must decide whether to fracture or consolidate. This is the moment Rome expects Palmyra to fall back into line, for the widow to retreat, for male generals to seize control. Zenobia does the opposite. She steps forward as regent for her son, not quietly, not apologetically. She takes command of the army, controls the treasury, maintains diplomatic relations as if nothing has changed. And something extraordinary happens. The soldiers accept her, the merchants follow her, the cities obey her, because she does not rule as a placeholder. She rules as a sovereign who understands exactly what is at stake. Rome hesitates. And in politics, hesitation is a crack in the wall. Zenobia does not declare rebellion. She does not insult Rome. She simply begins governing as if Rome no longer needs to be consulted. Taxes stay in Palmyra. Troops answer to her. Orders come with her seal. She speaks the language of loyalty while practicing the mechanics of independence. And Rome, exhausted and distracted, allows it. For now. But Zenobia is not building a buffer state. She is building a replacement. And in the chaos of a dying empire, she sees what few others dare to admit. Rome is no longer invincible. It is just big. And big things, when they fall, make room for something new. The queen who took Egypt and cut Rome's lifeline. Zenobia does not rebel with speeches. She rebels with logistics. Because she understands something every great conqueror learns early. Empires don't fall when their flags are torn down. They fall when their supply lines are cut. And Rome's most important supply line is not in Italy, it is in Egypt. Egypt feeds Rome. Its grain keeps the capital from starving. Control the Nile, and you hold Rome by the throat. So, Zenobia moves south. Not with a chaotic invasion, with a calculated campaign. Her generals sweep through Roman-controlled Syria. Cities open their gates without resistance. Local officials switch sides because Zenobia pays on time and protects trade. Then her armies enter Egypt, and Rome barely has time to understand what is happening before it is already over. Alexandria, Rome's intellectual crown jewel, falls to Palmyrene forces. The Egyptian governor is defeated. The grain supply shifts hands, and Zenobia does something bold enough to make history gasp. She begins issuing coinage in her own name, not as Rome's servant, not as a provincial governor, but as queen. Across the eastern Mediterranean, merchants now answer to Palmyra. Military orders carry Zenobia's authority. Diplomatic letters treat her court as equal to Rome's. She does not call herself empress, but everyone knows what she is building, an empire that rivals Rome's and may replace it. And here is the part that terrifies Roman historians. She governs well. Trade flourishes, cities stabilize, taxes are lower and more predictable. For ordinary people, Zenobia's rule feels less like rebellion and more like relief, which is the most dangerous kind of revolution there is. Rome finally wakes up. And when Rome wakes up, it does not negotiate, it sends legions. A new emperor rises in the west, Aurelian, a soldier with no patience for rival thrones and no illusions about compromise. While Zenobia builds libraries and fortifications, Aurelian rebuilds Rome's army into a weapon meant for one purpose, to remind the world who still owns it. The war that follows is fast, brutal, and personal. Zenobia rides with her troops, addresses soldiers directly, commands strategy, not just ceremony. She loses ground in open battle, but she does not collapse. She retreats to Palmyra and fortifies it like a jewel in stone. And as Roman legions surround her desert capital, the message becomes clear. Rome will not allow a woman, or anyone, to replace it. But Zenobia is not finished yet, because queens who have already taken Egypt do not surrender quietly. The siege of Palmyra and the queen who would not bow. Palmyra rises from the desert like a mirage made solid. Tall walls, massive gates, towers built to watch horizons that never stop moving. It is a fortress, but it is also a symbol, proof that a city built on trade and tolerance can become a capital of empire. When Aurelian's legions arrive, they expect a quick victory. They are wrong. Palmyra holds. Roman siege engines batter the walls. Archers trade fire from towers. Food grows scarce inside the city. But Zenobia does not retreat into palace shadows. She walks the battlements, speaks to soldiers, shares rations with civilians, not as a distant monarch, but as a commander who understands what collapse looks like and refuses to allow it. Aurelian sends offers of mercy. If Zenobia surrenders, he will spare the city. She will be treated with honor. History likes to imagine women pleading. Zenobia refuses. She answers that she will not accept mercy from a man who calls conquest justice. So the siege tightens. Water runs low. Disease spreads. The city that once dazzled caravans now smells of desperation and dust. And Zenobia makes one last gamble. Under cover of night, she mounts a horse and rides out through the desert, racing east toward the Euphrates. She is trying to reach Persia, trying to secure an alliance, trying to keep her empire alive beyond Palmyra's walls. For a moment, just a moment, it almost works. But Roman cavalry catch her near the river. They drag the most powerful woman in the east back to Aurelian's camp. Not as a queen, as a prisoner. When Palmyra hears she has been taken, the city surrenders. Aurelian spares it, briefly. But empires have long memories, and mercy does not last when pride is wounded. Soon after, Palmyra rebels again. Rome returns. This time, it is not restrained. The city is sacked. Its wealth is stripped. Its people slaughtered or scattered. The jewel of the desert becomes a warning carved into sand. And Zenobia? She is taken west in chains. Across lands she once ruled, through cities that once bowed. Rome will not just defeat her, it will display her. Because Rome does not merely conquer bodies, it conquers stories. The woman Rome could not turn into a footnote. Rome does not hide its victories. It parades them. Captured kings, foreign treasures, exotic animals. Entire defeated nations reduced to moving scenery for Roman pride. And at the center of Aurelian's triumph, the prize everyone comes to see, Zenobia of Palmyra. They dress her in jewels, not kindness, symbolism, gold chains heavy enough to exhaust her, gemstones meant to announce that even in defeat, she represents conquered wealth. She is not meant to look human, she is meant to look like a trophy. Crowds line the streets, waiting to see the woman who dared to rule half the East, the queen who called herself equal to emperors, the barbarian who humiliated Roman governors. Some expect rage, some expect tears. What they get is silence. Zenobia walks upright, head high, eyes forward, not pleading, not performing, just enduring. And Rome, for all its cruelty, has a weakness for spectacle with dignity. Aurelian, who could have executed her, does something stranger. He spares her, not out of mercy, out of calculation. Killing her would make her a martyr. Keeping her alive turns her into proof of Roman dominance. But it also turns her into something else, a living reminder that Rome had nearly lost the East to a woman. Instead of prison, she is given a villa near Tiber, outside Rome, a kind of elegant exile. She is allowed servants, comfort, even some freedom of movement. Historians argue about what happens next. Some say she married a Roman senator. Some say she became a philosopher. Some say she lived quietly, raising children who grew up Roman. The records blur. And that, strangely, is part of her victory. Rome does not know what to do with a woman who is neither executed nor obedient nor broken. So they soften her. They domesticate her. They turn a conquering queen into a respectable footnote. But the world remembers what Rome tried to forget, that for a brief, impossible moment, Zenobia ruled an empire that stretched from Anatolia to Egypt, that she commanded armies, negotiated with kings, stood on battlefields and refused surrender. And even in defeat, Rome could not erase that. They could only cage it gently and hope time would dull the edges. It didn't, because centuries later, we are not telling the story of Aurelian's triumph. We are telling the story of the woman who forced him to prove himself. Why Rome needed her to become a monster. After Zenobia is defeated, Rome does something familiar. It rewrites her. Not as a capable ruler, not as a strategist who exploited Roman weakness, not as a queen who held a multicultural empire together with brutal efficiency and sharp diplomacy, but as a warning. Roman writers describe her as arrogant, too ambitious, too proud for a woman. They whisper about excess, about decadence, about Eastern luxury softening her mind. Because Rome does not like admitting this truth. She didn't lose because she was reckless. She lost because Rome finally focused its full attention on stopping her. Before that, she had been winning. So the story shifts. Not Rome barely survived, but a foolish woman overreached. Not an empire rose in the desert, but a queen corrupted by vanity. This is how powerful women get archived, as moral lessons, not political actors. And yet, her reputation refuses to behave. In the East, Zenobia becomes something else entirely. A symbol of independence, a champion of local rule, a reminder that Rome was not destiny. In later Arab and Syrian traditions, she becomes heroic, wise, brilliant, a builder of cities and patron of scholars. Two empires remember her differently. Rome calls her dangerous, her people call her great. That split tells you everything. Even modern historians wrestle with her. Was she a nationalist, a pragmatist, an opportunist riding chaos? The answer is probably yes, because Zenobia did not fight Rome out of ideology alone. She fought because she could, because power had fallen into her hands, and she understood what it meant to lose it. She was not trying to make a point, she was trying to rule, and that, more than rebellion or romance or revenge, is what truly terrified Rome. Not that she challenged them, but that she competed with them on their own terms. The cost of refusing to kneel. History likes its rebels tidy, dead on the battlefield, broken in prison, repentant in the end. Zenobia fits none of those shapes. After her defeat, Rome parades her in triumph, gold chains, imperial spectacle, a living trophy meant to say, this is what happens when you challenge us. But even here, the story fractures. Some accounts say she walked in dignity. Others say she collapsed from exhaustion. Some say she later lived quietly in Italy, wealthy and respected. Others insist she died young, punished and forgotten. Rome could not agree on how to finish her story, and that alone tells you something. Because empires prefer their enemies simple. Zenobia was not. She was a woman who ruled without apology, who commanded armies, who governed cities, who negotiated with philosophers and generals and kings. She did not borrow power from a husband. She did not rule through sons. She ruled directly. And when that kind of woman loses, history doesn't know what to do with her, so it blurs the ending. But here is the truth that survives every version. For a moment, not a myth, not a rumor, but a real moment, the Roman Empire had to treat a woman as its equal enemy. Not as a scandal, not as a footnote, but as a rival state. And that is extraordinary. Zenobia didn't fail because she was reckless. She failed because no empire tolerates competition forever. And yet, her cities remained. Her laws shaped the region long after Rome reclaimed it. Her name outlived the generals who defeated her. Empires fall, legends migrate. Zenobia becomes proof of something Rome never wanted preserved, that power is not owned by gender, bloodline, or tradition. It is seized, held, defended, and sometimes lost, but never forgotten. So when Rome tried to turn her into a cautionary tale, they miscalculated. Because caution fades, but defiance survives. And somewhere between the desert and the archives, between conquest and memory, Zenobia still stands, not as the woman who lost, but as the woman who dared to build an empire where Rome thought none could exist. And that kind of courage never really dies. It just waits for the next woman to recognize it in herself. And that's where we leave her. On the page, in the archive, in the rumor, in the shadow she carved into history. Maybe she was a villain. Maybe she was a victim. Maybe she was something far more dangerous. A woman who refused the role she was handed. But one thing is certain. The world wasn't ready for her then, and it still isn't now. If you enjoyed falling down this rabbit hole of power, defiance, and the women history tried to bury, make sure you're here for the next chapter, because there are more of them, more rebels, more survivors, more legends disguised as scandals. Until next time, keep questioning the stories you were told, and keep an eye on the women they warned you about.